Today, CloudX is our featured supplier guest, and the topic, AP and accounting trends for dealerships. And we'll have Chuck Pappas, our VP of Operations, come on in just a moment to kick things off and introduce our guest presenter. Let's get things going now. Chuck, you can activate your webcam.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for registering for another Profit Improvement webinar. We're glad you're joining us today. This afternoon, we're pleased to present Chris Cosgrove, co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer at CloudX. Today, Chris will provide some expert insights in the latest automation trends in accounts payable and invoicing. We have a slide up right now, so if you're interested in getting a copy of this webinar, feel free to scan the QR code below, and as soon as we get this posted to our website, we'll make sure that you get a copy of it. You know, we started this webinar series about 3 years ago. And in the course of these webinars, we have presented a number of topics. There are expense categories, audit and recovery categories, and new revenue opportunities. These are all intended to reduce your expenses and improve your profitability. So if you're new to this series, we encourage you to stay tuned and watch for other profit improvement topics. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Chuck, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Chris Cosgrove. It's a pleasure to be with you. Today, we're going to be talking about profit improvement and specifically AP and accounting trends for dealerships. So some exciting things to share, and know that you're going to learn some valuable information out of our time together today. So let's get started. Before we get rolling too far, we just want to get to know who's in our audience today. So if you could please respond to this poll, let us know if you're dealer principal and dealer management, service team member, or StrategicSource team member. That'd be awesome. We'll give a couple seconds for you to respond. All right. I don't know if we want to make those available on screen, but that's probably a good amount of time. Perfect. Wonderful. Second question we have is, has your dealership automated any AP processes yet at this point? So the options there for that would be just data entry, invoice approvals and storage, data entry three-way match, that's the PO match, approvals, storage, and posting. D is all of C plus payment execution, or E, no AP process automation so far. See those responses coming in, that's great. Give another couple seconds and we'll get rolling. All right, so we see some data entry, just data entry, some no API process automation, so some people have done nothing yet. That's great to know, just to help us speak with context to the opportunities there. Very good. Okay, so what we're going to learn today and what we're going to talk about are really the latest automation trends. You know, what percent have automated AP today? Of dealers, that is, and mid-market enterprises, benefits of invoice automation, benefits of payment automation, and then the potential ROI of AP automation. So let's get going. So the last poll we want to ask before we really dive into the guts of what we're going to share today would be to have you discussed AP automation at your dealership? And no, and this is new to me, no, but I've heard about it, or yes, we have discussed AP automation. Very good. Awesome. So we'll share those. Okay. So it looks like, no, this is new to me. No, I've heard about it. Yes, we have discussed. So that's good. Again, kind of a mix across the board. All right. So with respect to AP and accounting trends for 2024, basically the elimination of repetitive manual labor is one of the trends that we see. With respect to AP invoice processing, you know, people are looking to elevate the role of their, you know, work to focus on higher order activities, less manual activities, specifically the elimination of data entry. Other areas of opportunity and trends that we see would be in statement reconciliation, specifically vendor statement reconciliation, even part statements, check signing, right? Some of these manual physical processes that can be automated through different tools, payments execution, and more. These are all on trend to be automated. Another key focus for certainly larger groups or multi-store, multi-franchise groups would be the centralization and standardization of accounting process. This starts to enable basically economies of scale and a centralization of controls as a dealership group is scaling and growing. By having a standardized process, it opens up the ability to concentrate those resources in one area that can then collaborate across the stores, especially through technology solutions. So this is something that, really forward-thinking dealers have moved into as a trend and as a best practice. Obviously, a little bit harder if, from a scale perspective on the operational side, if you don't have a solution to support that, but that's definitely a trend that we've seen. And then really the interesting stat at the bottom is that 68% have automated some portion of AP in the mid-market, right, mid-sized enterprise. And when you start talking about AP automation, it's kind of important to define terms because it can mean the whole gamut of the accounts payable invoice journey from the time that invoice comes in, gets approved in the GL coding and allocation process of the PO match, or the payment side. So that's what we mean when we're saying some portion. So some of that front end piece is possible to automate, certainly the payments, execution, physically how you're paying the vendors. That also has been couched as AP automation. So defining terms is somewhat important and to gain the right context for what's possible to automate. Now, in terms of AP invoice statement and payment automation for dealerships, this is where CloudX has focused really since 2017. We've been around since 2011, automating AP in a variety of vertical markets, but we entered automotive in 2017, beginning to work with DealerTrack directly and becoming an OpenTrack certified partner. So we communicate with most of these DMSs through API level integrations. And really what's exciting is that as those systems have made more of their data set available, it starts to unfold and open up new opportunities for dealers to take advantage of these automation tools that previously have all kind of had to be manual because of the lack of communication between the DMS and systems like our AP Smart system, for instance. So one of the things that's crucial is invoice and statement workflow automation. And basically in that invoice kind of what we'll call presentment phase, when the invoice comes into your dealership, either through the vendor emailing it to you or mailing it in or physically submitting it, taking that, digitizing that record to a digital document, lifting the data off of that document using advanced technology and processes around that, and then automating the data from that document to marry it up against data inside your DMS, right? You certainly have your purchase order data. At times you'll have to GL code specific things. You may have default geocoding for specific vendors, but these kinds of things can now be expedited through the use of an automation tool. And so you can enhance kind of the process while mitigating a lot of the data entry and manual workflow that you're probably doing today outside of an automation solution. And so it makes that whole approval process highly visible, highly controlled, totally auditable, right? So you can establish a chain of custody within a document flow. And then it also opens up opportunities to start to reconcile the data that's being surfaced off of the invoices against things like vendor statements. So now you don't have to go through and kind of line by line break a statement down into minutia. You can focus on the outliers because you already know where you stand relative to that vendor statement based on the invoice data that's within a system like what we provide. And so it's really kind of radically changing the nature of the work of AP, whereby people can focus more on the outliers, those transactions that require some intervention or some adjustment or whatnot, and not have to be kind of burdened by the most mundane aspects of the data entry and the physical reconciliation. And so obviously everything I just mentioned, the data capture, geocoding, 2- and 3-way matching. So just to clarify that, with respect to PO matching, there are generally two approaches. You have the PO match, the 2-way match, where we're taking the data that's inherent on the invoice that we're capturing at the line detail level, plus the PO number, of course, and then bouncing that PO number off the PO data within the DMS. But if you want to go a step further and you require the 3-way match, which now factors in the receipt data for the PO, we can do that as well with the systems that make that data available. So it's really kind of interesting in terms of now that the data sets are becoming available by way of the DMS APIs, you start to open up a whole new opportunity to have automated reconciliation in that match process, automated posting back to the DMS, and generally an easier process that's much more visible. Now, the other piece and kind of the more back-end aspect of AP automation is the payments automation and monetization approach. And so at a high level, it's taking how dealers are typically managing payments and consolidating it into kind of one seamless flow. So outside of an automation solution like this, you'll typically have to interface with multiple payment types. So people will cut physical checks. They may manage some ACH transactions. They may handle something via a personal or an owner credit card. And it's all kind of done in a bit of a disjointed way. So they're kind of managing each payment stream separately and not in a consolidated effort. And so through a system like ours, you can essentially choose the bills you want to pay, submit that for payment, and basically optimize how the vendors are wanting to be paid according to a strategy to convert them over to digital methods like what's called virtual cards, single-use virtual credit cards that are pre-funded for an exact amount, whether that's one invoice, the value of one invoice, or the value of a batch of invoices. Alternatively, defaulting the vendors into an ACH transaction or a check. And so it's a strategic move because it gets you out of the kind of latency issues that come with a check, the cost of postage and getting the check signed physically and out the door, and gets you into this digital space where you can have a single-use card transaction that then rewards you with an ongoing cash rebate. So in effect, you streamline the process, you offload some of the kind of more tedious aspects of it into kind of almost a payments as a service approach, and then it comes with the derivative benefit of an ongoing cash rebate. And so we're excited because we've now, expanded from working with exclusively DealerTrack in the early days to now working with Techion, having live customers on that, beginning to work with CDK Global, integrating with DealerBuilt and PBS, and then beginning to work with Dominion View. So really expanding our footprint across the various DMSs that are out there as those data sets are becoming more and more available. So it's a really exciting time as a dealer to start to look at new ways to innovate and to drive cost savings and monetization gains within your environments. So in terms of the high level of the business problems we solve, we've kind of already touched on it in a way, but basically, life outside of an AP automation solution is just way more manual, way more paper intensive, limited from a visibility perspective. It's disjointed, as I said, and it involves line by line invoice and statement reconciliation. It's just a total grind. And one of the things we routinely hear is that, dealers are having a harder time retaining talent, and it's not limited to the dealership space. It's harder to retain quality talent, especially in the accounting area. It's somewhat overlooked. And identifying and succeeding that talent with, replacements is challenging. So when you have a solution that can start to provide you some scale, some more efficiency, and free your people up to do more meaningful work in this automated way, it starts to kind of enhance the quality of life from a work standpoint. So it's not so much tied to just data entry, but now they're actually doing some more knowledge work. It also offers a little bit more of a reward that way. It just opens up a better opportunity, right? So you kind of improve those vendor relationships. You eliminate the loss of invoices or duplication of invoices into your system. You can reduce some fraud and things like that. But it's a night and day shift from a kind of pre and post automation state. So what should someone expect to gain from an automation initiative? We would say, and we've seen in third-party kind of analyst data that we reference, up to 85% efficiency gains. And namely, that comes primarily from the elimination of data entry, but also by picking up automated workflow cycles. So basically being able to route transactions, route invoices for approval according to the business rules you want to enforce within your own organization. Certainly around that three-way match process, some of those items can be fully automated where those data sets agree between the invoice, the PO, and the receipt data to ultimately post back to the DMS. But the nice thing is that not only do you gain, a high level of efficiency, but the ones that are outside of kind of the full auto posting scenario, they're brought to your attention in a way. So now you're just focusing on triaging the outliers, right? You don't have to sift through everything. You can just focus on the ones that really require intervention because either the data doesn't agree, the pricing's changed at the vendor level, or the PO has to be established correctly. you can now focus on the ones that are the true kind of problems and fix those much, much faster. The other piece from our perspective is really the approach that we take is one that tailors the solution around the nuances of your dealership. And even within a vertical market like automotive, where many dealers do things similarly, there's always a little bit of nuance between how one group does things versus another. And that could be like a data level tweak or just business rules from a controls standpoint, who can approve for what value and, the kind of flow they want something to take. And that's where, you get the benefit of not having to work with just an out of the box solution where everything is kind of, here's what it is. We start to kind of cater the solution in a more bespoke way that's kind of custom fit for your environment, but building upon the reliability, the integrations that we have to the DMSs. So it's kind of the best of both worlds that way. Now, with respect to PaySmart, that's really our solution for the integrated payments as a service model I was just talking about. Essentially, through our interface, you can route payments for approval to whatever approvers are required to initiate a payment. Some groups have, a single payment authorizer and the CFO, controller, or owner. Others have kind of teams of people who can approve and require, 2 sign-offs on a payment. This is done digitally through a secure workflow to be able to initiate and then finally approve those payments. Basically, then we communicate to our payments partners through an API where we're passing them the vendor invoice detail, and they in turn are executing real-time vendor enablement. That basically means they're reaching out to the vendors, identifying how the vendor wants to be paid, and then passing them that payment according to the instrument that the vendor has chosen. So they offer the virtual card, they lead with that. If the vendor doesn't want to take the card or moves to in turn invoke a merchant fee upon you for taking the card, they'll automatically default them into an ACH or a check transaction, and that's a fully kind of consolidated service flow. As those payments execute and those payments get identified, in other words, a virtual card number is created, a check number is issued, and the check is printed and mailed, those elements are then written back into the AP Smart system. So we're reconciling how each invoice was paid with the exact payment identifier as that's being updated in real time from our payments partners. So it kind of closes the loop on the entirety of the life cycle from when the invoice came in through the approval and posting, and then on to the payments. You have the whole narrative of how that invoice has come through the organization in one interface, which is really, really powerful. And so you can enhance, obviously your controls over the process that way while kind of enabling, a remote approval of those kinds of things. Sometimes you'll have, approvers in different locations, and that can be a bottleneck if you're doing it in a manual way. So one of the key things that's important from our perspective when we're talking to dealers really all over the country is to understand, what is the potential for ROI with respect to an AP invoice and payments automation. And we just talked to it, and from an efficiency standpoint, you can easily expect to see 70 to 85% efficiency gain through the elimination of data entry. And then we can equate kind of what the labor value of that time is. We do some benchmarking that way with third-party analyst data from places like Aberdeen Group and so forth, IOFM. And then we can essentially see what a current state process or CPI, cost of process and invoice is for your organization, which can be obviously predicated based on accounting rates for labor in your area, but it can also be influenced by how you're physically moving documents in your organization. And we've seen kind of a range of things from everything from EDI, which are really sophisticated electronic transactions, to interoffice mail, to email, to some workflow solutions like SharePoint. Alternatively, for really large organizations where there's a lot of distance, sometimes we've even seen couriers, right? So people have different ways of moving transactions between remote environments, and all of that can kind of influence the workflow costs required to support the approval of an invoice or even the approval of a check. And so within this rapid kind of AP assessment, we can benchmark where you're at today and then assess what does it look like if automation is brought to bear in your environment. What is that going to open up to you in terms of the potential of the ROI gain? And we can get really kind of granular with that to paint a picture of what that looks like in the post-automation state and what you can expect to earn out of that from an ROI perspective. As well as on the payment side, we can predict really how much you can generate from a rebate perspective. And in most cases, for the auto stores that we're working with, and the auto groups that we're working with, the monetization component of payments can even more than offset all of the invoice processing services that we charge for. So in effect, if you automate the entire solution, you can actually fund itself and beyond that. So you actually flip AP into something of a profit center, if you can even imagine that, through the entirety of that effort, right? So we would encourage you and invite you to consider having one of these done. We'd be happy to perform that for you as a gift to you. And with that said, we want to just ask this question because lately, AI, has been all the rage. It's everyone's talking about it. We have talked to some of our controllers who are using it in different aspects, but we want to know, has your dealership started using AI in any finance or accounting functions? Yes. Okay. Good. Seeing those results come in. Good. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, we'd love to learn how you're using it. Certainly, I've seen a lot at shows like NADA on the sales and service side. Curious to see how you're doing it in the finance and accounting functions. It's awesome. All right, just a couple seconds. There we go. We'll share that. So yes, 75% of you saying yes, we are using that. That's really intriguing. Would love to understand that. Very good. So if you would even want to share that in the question field, that'd be amazing to see what you're doing today and how that's helping you. Okay. Very good. All right. So at a high level, AP Smart and Pay Smart benefits up to 85% process efficiency in AP, improved data availability and insights, cost savings and increased cash flow, preventing fraudulent payments by enforcing payments controls, the approval process, and improved payments ease, really. Couple client testimonials we'd love to share. Two wonderful gals, controller CFOs. Jelaine Halverson, really credit to her, pioneer in this industry from an AP automation standpoint, was our first client in 2017, still a customer today. So we established the dealer track integration with her. We also got to work with her on Techion, which was phenomenal, and really someone who had the vision to kind of flip the whole process from a manual process to everything I just described today. And then in addition, also working on some power sports Harley-Davidson stores as well, which we didn't include, but we do integrate with that system as well. And then Michelle Einbeck at a over 100-year-old auto group, Furman Auto Group in the Tampa area, with over 25, 26 stores operating on this system. Really just powerful testimonials and kind of power users, I would say, of our system, but really visionaries to bring the automation to bear and really derive all the benefits that I've talked about. So we love sharing those wins because we know that they can mean wins for other new people we could potentially work with as well. So in terms of a couple of potential next steps, if there's anything that intrigued you today that you'd like to learn more about, obviously, to reverse the order here, we offer you the AP invoice and payments benchmark assessment. That's a free gift to you. We'd love to make that available if you'd like that. We're going to make my contact info available in a moment. We can get you set up for that. Or if you want to actually see the AP Smart system in a live environment, be able to see what that looks like and get a little more detail into how we transform the process from manual to kind of highly automated, we'd love to make a demo available to you as well. You can learn a ton. And with that, this is my contact information. You can get a hold of me at ccosgrove@cloudxdpo.com. My phone number is below that as well. Feel free to call or shoot me a text. I'm also on LinkedIn, so if you see me out there, we have a lot of great content we're promoting that way as well.
All right, and thank you, Chris. And now it's time for the Q&A portion. Everyone out there, you can go ahead and click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, and those questions will come right into Chris. So let's take a look at things here. All right, here is one. How long does implementation take for a dealership location?
Yeah, that's a good question. Generally speaking, the longest portion for an implementation is getting the first 1 or 2 stores off the ground, because there's some thought work that needs to go into how invoices are going to flow and how a digital kind of workflow is going to take hold and getting people trained. So in a kind of first 2-store environment, I would say 6 to 8 weeks, and then successive stores can go as quickly as 2 weeks to onboard from there on out. So in a larger group, obviously it takes a little bit of a focused effort, but we project manage that with groups of all sizes. But yeah, you could be up and running within about 6 to 8 weeks, and then additional stores basically every 2 weeks or so.
All right, here is another. What do I need to accomplish before automating?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes people have a vision of, man, I'd really like to be in a streamlined process, and we want to get there, but it's the how we're going to get there and thinking through the thought work of even, like I just said, the approval processes, optimizing it. Whenever you implement a system like this, it's an opportunity to refine things a little bit. And it opens up some new possibilities. So some of the thought work from a workflow escalation and business rules standpoint, when clients have that kind of down in advance, it obviously can expedite the deployment phase, and it just helps them get to that kind of desired end state faster.
Again, attendees can ask questions of Chris by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Here's one. Does CloudX offer training on AP Smart?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in most cases, we typically operate through kind of a weekly training session through webinar, but in certain, larger group environments, we want to really support the client. We're willing to even come out, and we understand that really in this industry, there's a desire for some of that kind of personal connection. And so we'd love to do that, but we support you a variety of ways. So we create, user training guides. We have dedicated project kind of client success managers who will help you move from point A to point B. And again, we can come in person and help you during that deployment phase, especially in those larger group environments where you're kind of training power users and kind of admin supervisors over the system to really gain confidence as you adopt.
Chuck will have you reactivate your webcam in just a moment, but one final question I see. What is a common ROI on AP payment automation?
Yeah, we generally see returns on investment in the 60 to kind of 85% range from that cost savings perspective. But the monetization effect, as I said before, can literally be so significant that it more than offsets the cost of the invoice processing. So it's substantial, and it's one of the few narratives where I've actually seen, it kind of becomes the goose that lays the golden egg, except you get to keep the goose and you keep to getting the golden egg.
All right, I see no further questions. So Chuck, can you reactivate your webcam and get ready for the next portion of the webinar?
Well, we all know how AP invoicing can take a lot of time and resources. So we would encourage all of you to reach out to Chris and the CloudX team to find out how automation can simplify your operations. We have his contact information up right here. Our webinar will be up on our site here in the next day or two. So if you'd like a copy of it, make sure you scan this QR code and we'll be sure to send you off one as soon as we can. So we appreciate that. For anyone thinking about their expenses right now and listening to that kind of an ROI from CloudX, you got to be thinking about expenses and what that could mean to you. You have to ask yourself, how much money are you leaving on the table? Most dealers are overspending on supplies and services by 25% each month. There's about 150 expense category options out there where you can spend money. Most dealers spend roughly 100 of those, roughly about 100 of those categories. Spend as a percent of sales equals about 5%. So if you're $100 million that you do in sales, and that equates to 5%, that's equal to $5 million. 25% of that looks like $1.250 million on an annual basis, which you can have the ability to save with StrategicSource. Part of the reason this happens is that 95% of the dealerships in the United States are decentralized, meaning they don't have a specific purchasing department and they give the locations the freedom to select their own suppliers. StrategicSource can be that purchasing partner for you. The business problem that the dealers are experiencing is that there's too many categories. Typically, there's not a plan to attack those categories, and dealers are short-staffed. StrategicSource has a lot of experience in cost reduction analysis. Last year, we completed over 2,300 sourcing projects in expense categories used by dealerships. Expense challenges. Dealers are typically overpaying for supplies by 25%. These broad scopes there's a broad scope of categories, and there's too many suppliers to manage, too many supplier invoices to process, and you get too few discounts and rebates to be able to take advantage of. So the question and the challenge becomes, how do we simplify that? This is an incredible slide, and you want this slide presentation just to look at this slide. This shows what the annual savings opportunity might be for 4 different size groups, ranging from 25 to 300 million in annual sales, and what those sales savings could look like on a monthly basis. Remember, the cost savings goes right down to the bottom line. It has an immediate impact on your profitability. Expense category scope, we'll just touch on this briefly. There are 72 categories in this area, and most businesses, no matter what kind of a business you're in, if you're a dealership, a church, a manufacturing company, or a service provider, you're likely to spend in these 72 categories. If you own your facility, or even if you're leasing it, you're probably going to spend in these 15 related categories. If you're an automobile dealer, there's about 56 more categories that you're going to be spending in. Now you can start to see how this scope of work gets to be really big. You're talking about dealing with 130 to 150 categories, and that can be pretty overwhelming. But StrategicSource has some solutions for you. Our profit improvement program. We have a profit improvement program that we manage the process of conducting a financial analysis on your spending. We do spend category planning. We source money-saving solutions for those spend categories. We implement the solutions, and we do a supplier compliance audit on all of those to make sure you're getting the prices that you were promised and that you're saving the kind of money that we told you. The problem StrategicSource solves and helps you correct are high expenses and broad supplier bases. Our strategic spend analysis. This is another tool in our strategic spend analysis. This is more of a strategic look at your expenses. We analyze them, put them in the correct category buckets, and we build a plan for you to execute. What do you get out of this? An organized, prioritized plan and a good staff planning tool, all with the idea that we can help direct you to a 25% savings. Contract Tracker. This Contract Tracker tool, most dealers have a number of contracts. I've seen dealerships that have had a couple hundred of them, and they're all over the place, especially if they've got a number of rooftops. Keeping current and managing all of the terms of those contracts can be a daunting task. The benefits that you get from Contract Tracker are contract visibility. You get alerts on expiration dates, and it's a risk mitigation that you may want to renegotiate just by bringing it to your attention a little bit early, and it's not an automatic re-signing of that contract. Our spend management suite solves the problems of poor staff planning, no contract management, high prices, and weak profits. Your benefits: a strategic focus on your categories that you're spending in, contract tracking, improved pricing and profits. Expense Edge was created from our data based on thousands of price comps. This is kind of similar to Home Depot. We provide the tools and solutions for you to do the work. We give you the data points to keep your costs down. Spend management learning. We do a lot of training in the areas of spend management. We have trained many folks. We do many webinars a year on purchasing 101, 102, and 103. Simply put, we can teach your team to do what our team does. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully this has been a helpful presentation today. Again, scan this QR code and we'll get the information out to you right away. Thanks again to Chris from CloudX for his presentation. As a note, StrategicSource does not take any compensation from any of our suppliers, but we do know that we have vetted them. We know that we know what their work product is, and we know how competitive they can be. We would encourage you to take a deeper look at our suppliers' offerings. Thanks again for attending. David?
All right. Thank you, Chuck, and everyone. Thank you for spending a little over a half hour with us on the topic. And now we're going to bring up a post-session survey to get some of your feedback because that is very important to us. That is now on your screen, just 2 short and sweet questions. And again, we value that from you. Thanks, everyone, for your time today, and we look forward to you joining us on future Profit Improvement Series events with StrategicSource. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the week.